The basis of our sermon this morning is the gospel reading. What a big Sunday. We have confirmation at the late service. We have Mother's Day and John. Oh my. But first, Mother's Day. Thank you, moms. Thank you. Every person here who's been a mom or supported someone, thank you so much. We'll get back to you though. Confirmation. Now, confirmation isn't in this service, but I want you to think back for a second to your confirmation. Think about what a milestone that was for your relationship with God. How has your relationship grown since then? How have you stayed connected? Because that's our theme for this morning is staying connected to Christ. And what role that moms or faith moms have in that. And now we get to John. You know, last week was Good Shepherd Sunday, and we heard those wonderful, comforting words about how Jesus is the Good Shepherd and how his sheep know his voice. It's those comforting words coming from our Savior who's talking to his disciples, knowing that in a shorter time he would be with them physically, bodily, no longer. He would be going back to the Father. And so he comforts them, letting them and you and me know that he is still with us, still caring for us. And so this week, we get to one of Jesus' most well-explained parables. And it's really not as comforting. In fact, the whole image is that of basically yard waste, branches that get cut off. Like those days when they have the yard waste collection. You see those bundles of branches and vines. They're just dry and withered up, waiting to be picked up. They're not useful for anything. It's not that comforting at all. Jesus keeps talking about how if you don't remain in him and he in you, we become like one of those branches that's cut off and just withers up. Well, it's not that comforting at all. It's very clear that what Jesus is driving at is that we have to stay connected. See, he's the vine, and God the Father's the vine dresser or the gardener. And unless we stay connected to him, to Christ, the gardener is going to have to cut us away so that the vine can stay healthy. We've got to stay connected. That's the key for us this morning. But it's really easy to find pictures of what being disconnected is like. One that comes to mind is my first job. Now, Rudy, we were talking earlier about you going to that museum and seeing all those jet engines. Well, I got to see one of our nation's first jet engines at my first engineering job. It was the old Pratt & Whitney plant in Kansas City, Missouri. And one day, my mentor took me through a maze into the very back, oldest part of the plant. And I got to see this, unassuming cylinder with tubes and wires. It was one of our nation's first jet engines. It was pretty neat, but it wasn't the most interesting experience I had. No. The most interesting experience I had was making the most unique friendship I've ever had. Oh, I made a friend, we'll call him Sam. Sam was my mentor, and so we got to spend a lot of time together. He kind of showed me the ropes, helped me to get to know this big old plant and get to know how things worked. And he was also another electrical engineer. We spent a lot of time together, and as we began to spend more time together, we began sharing about our lives. And I had the strangest sensation. I can only really describe it like talking to a mirror. He and I were so similar that as we talked, it felt like I knew exactly what he was going to say, and he knew exactly what I was going to say. We had so many similar interests. When I went out to the house that he built, I looked at it and said, this is exactly what I dreamed of. It was so strange. But there was one giant, the most important way that we were different. See, Sam was disconnected from God. His parents took him to church growing up. In fact, when he was still in high school, their pastor at their church left, and they said, "Sam, why don't you come explain the Bible passage to us?" And so he did. Until one week, his father died. And on his father's deathbed, his father said something to him that really bothered Sam. It bothered Sam so much that the next Sunday he came up in front of the church and said, "I'm sorry. I'm leaving and I'm never coming back." And he walked out. To my knowledge, Sam has never reconnected with God. So as similar as Sam and I were in the little things, in the most important thing, that connection with God, we were completely different. It wasn't just like talking to a mirror. It was like talking to a mirror that someone had smashed right in the center, and there were fractures going throughout it. Sam, to my knowledge, has never reconnected with God. That disconnection isn't good. And as Sam shared his life with me, I began to see all the ways those little fractures had worked their way through his entire life.